This is the book of Adela's followers from the Oera Linda book, translated from ancient Frisian to Dutch by Dr. J. Otema and from Dutch to English by Dr. William Sandbach. 30 years after the day on which the Volksmoeder was murdered by the commander Magi was a time of great distress. All the states that lie on the other side of the Weser had been wrested from us and had fallen under the power of Magi, and it looked as if his power was to become supreme over the whole land. To avert this misfortune, a general assembly of the people was summoned, which was attended by all the men who stood in good repute with the Magden priestesses. Then, at the end of 3 days, the whole council was in confusion, and in the same position as when they came together. Thereupon Adela demanded to be heard, and said, "You all know that I was 3 years Burgmagd. You know also that I was chosen for Volksmoeder, but that I refused to be Volksmoeder because I wished to marry Apol. But what you do not know is that I have watched everything that has happened, as if I had really been your Volksmoeder. I have constantly traveled around, observing what was going on. By that means I have become acquainted with many things that others do not know. You said yesterday that our relatives on the other side of the Weser were dull and cowardly, but I may tell you that the Magi has not won a single village from them by force of arms, but only by detestable deceit, and still more by the rapacity of their dukes and nobles. Freya has said we must not admit amongst us any but free people. But what have they done? They have imitated our enemies, and instead of killing their prisoners or letting them go free, they have despised the counsel of Freya and made slaves of them. Because they have acted thus, Freya cared no longer to watch over them. They robbed others of their freedom and therefore lost their own. This is well known to you, but I will tell you how they came to sink so low. The Finn women had children. These grew up with our free children. They played and gambled together in the fields, and they were also together by the hearth. There they learned with pleasure the loose ways of the Finns, because they were bad and new, and thus they became denationalized in spite of the efforts of their parents. When the children grew up and saw that the children of the Finns handled no weapons and scarcely worked, they took a distaste for work and became proud. The principal men and their cleverest sons made up to the wanton daughters of the Finns, and their own daughters, led astray by this bad example, allowed themselves to be beguiled by the handsome young Finns in derision of their depraved fathers. When the Magi found this out, he took the handsomest of his Finns and Magyars and promised them red cows with golden horns, to let themselves be taken prisoners by our people in order to spread his doctrines. His people did even more. Children disappeared, were taken away to the uplands, and after they had been brought up in his pernicious doctrines, were sent back. When these pretended prisoners had learned our language, they persuaded the dukes and nobles that they should become subject to the Magi, that then their sons would succeed to them without having to be elected. Those who by their good deeds had gained a piece of land in front of their house, they promised on their side should receive in addition a piece behind. Those who had got a piece before and behind should have a rondile, or a complete circuit, and those who had a rondile should have a whole freehold. If the seniors were true to Freya, then they changed their course and turned to the degenerate sons. Yesterday, there were among you those who would have called the whole people together to compel the eastern states to return to their duty. According to my humble opinion, they would have made a great mistake. Suppose that there was a very serious epidemic among the cattle. Would you run the risk of sending your own healthy cattle among the sick ones? Certainly not. Everyone must see that doing that would turn out very badly for the whole of the cattle. Who, then, would be so imprudent as to send their children amongst a people wholly depraved. If I were to give you any advice, it would be to choose a new Volksmoder. I know that you are in a difficulty about it because out of the 13 Burgmagden that we still have remaining, 8 are candidates for the dignity, but I should pay no attention to that. Teuncia, the Burgmagd of Mediesblick, who is not a candidate, is a person of knowledge and sound sense, and quite as attached to our people and our customs as all the rest together. I should farther recommend that you should visit all the citadels and write down all the laws of Fria's texts, as well as all the histories, and all that is written on the walls, in order that it may not be destroyed with the citadels. It stands written that every Volksmoder and every Burgmagd shall have assistants and messengers, 21 maidens and 7 apprentices. If I might add more, I would recommend that all the respectable girls in the town should be taught, for I say positively, and time will show it, that if you wish to remain true children of Fria, never to be vanquished by fraud or arms, you must take care to bring up your daughters as true Fria's daughters. You must teach the children how great our country has been, what great men our forefathers were, how great we still are, if we compare ourselves to others. You must tell them of the sea heroes, of their mighty deeds and distant voyages. All these stories must be told by the fireside and in the field, wherever it may be, in times of joy or sorrow. And if you wish to impress it on the brains and hearts of your sons, you must let it flow through the lips of your wives and your daughters. Adela's advice was followed. These are the Grevet men under whose direction this book is composed. Apol, Adela's husband, 3 times a sea king, Grevet man of Ostflyland and Linda Urden, the towns Liudgarda, Lindahem, and Stevia are under his care. The Saxman Storo, Sitia's husband, Grevet men over the Hugefennen and Wooden. 9 times he was chosen as Duke or Heerman, commander. The towns Buda and Managarda Forda are under his care. Abelo, Yaltia's husband, Grevet man over the Zuiderflylanden. He was 3 times Heerman. The towns Aachen, Luitburg, and Katzburg are under his care. Enoch, Daiwicke's husband, Grevet man over Westflyland and Texel. He was chosen 9 times for sea king. Varaburg, Mediesblick, Forana, and Freesburg are under his care. Foppa, Dunru's husband, Grevet man over the 7 islands. He was 5 times sea king. The town Walhallagara is under his care. This was inscribed upon the walls of Friesburg in Texland, as well as at Stavia and Mediesblick. It was Fria's day, and 7 times 7 years had elapsed since Festa was appointed Volksmoder by the desire of Fria. The citadel of Mediesblick was ready, and a Burgmagd was chosen. Festa was about to light her new lamp, and when she had done so in the presence of all the people, Freya called from her watch star, so that every one could hear it. Festa, take your style and write these things, that I may not speak. Festa did as she was bid, and thus we became Freya's children, and our earliest history began. This is our earliest history. Viralda, who alone is eternal and good, made the beginning. Then commenced time. Time wrought all things, even the earth. The earth bore grass, herbs, and trees, all useful and all noxious animals. All that is good and useful she brought forth by day, and all that is bad and injurious by night. After the 12th Yule feast, she brought forth 3 maidens, Leda out of fierce heat, Finda out of strong heat, and Freya out of moderate heat. When the last came into existence, Viralda breathed his spirit upon her in order that men might be bound to him. As soon as they were full grown, they took pleasure and delight in the visions of Viralda. Hatred found its way among them. They each bore 12 sons and 12 daughters, at every Yule-time a couple. Thence come all mankind. Leda was black, her hair curled like a lamb's, her eyes shone like stars and shot out glances like those of a bird of prey. Leda was acute. She could hear a snake glide and could smell a fish in the water. Leda was strong and nimble. She could bend a large tree, yet when she walked she did not bruise a flower stalk. Leda was violent. Her voice was loud, and when she screamed in anger, every creature quailed. Wonderful Leda! She had no regard for laws. Her actions were governed by her passions. To help the weak she would kill the strong, and when she had done it she would weep by their bodies. Poor Leda! She turned grey by her mad behaviour, and at last she died heartbroken by the wickedness of her children. Foolish children! They accused each other of their mother's death. They howled and fought like wolves, and while they did this the birds devoured the corpses. Who can refrain from tears at such a recital? Finda was yellow, and her hair was like the mane of a horse. She could not bend a tree, but where Leda killed 1 lion, she killed 10. Finda was seductive. Her voice was sweeter than any bird's. Her eyes were alluring and enticing, but whoever looked upon them became her slave. Finda was unreasonable. She wrote thousands of laws, but never obeyed one. She despised the frankness of the good and gave herself up to flatterers. That was her misfortune. Her head was too full, but her heart was too vain. She loved nobody but herself, and she wished that all should love her. False Finda! Honey sweet were her words, but those who trusted them found sorrow at hand. Selfish Finda! She wished to rule everybody, and her sons were like her. They made their sisters serve them, and they slew each other for the mastery. Treacherous Finda! One wrong word would irritate her, and the cruelest deeds did not affect her. If she saw a lizard swallow a spider, she shuddered, but if she saw her children kill a Frisian, her bosom swelled with pleasure. Unfortunate Finda! She died in the bloom of her age, and the mode of her death is unknown. Hypocritical children! Her corpse was buried under a costly stone. Pompous inscriptions were written on it, and loud lamentations were heard at it, but in private not a tear was shed. Despicable people! The laws that Finda established were written on golden tablets, but the object for which they were made was never attained. The good laws were abolished, and selfishness instituted bad ones in their place. O Finda! Then the earth overflowed with blood, and your children were mowed down like grass. Yes, Finda, those were the fruits of your vanity. Look down from your watchstar and weep. Freya was white like the snow at sunrise, and the blue of her eyes vied with the rainbow. Beautiful Freya, like the rays of the sun shone the locks of her hair, which were as fine as spiders' webs. Clever Freya! When she opened her lips, the birds ceased to sing and the leaves to quiver. Powerful Freya! At the glance of her eye, the lion lay down at her feet, and the adder withheld its poison. Pure Freya! Her food was honey, and her beverage was dew gathered from the cups of the flowers. Sensible Freya! The first lesson that she taught her children was self-control, and the second was the love of virtue. And when they were grown, she taught them the value of liberty, for she said, "Without liberty all other virtues serve to make you slaves and to disgrace your origin." Generous Freya! She never allowed metal to be dug from the earth for her own benefit, but when she did it, it was for general use. Most happy Freya! Like the starry host in the firmament, her children clustered around her. Wise Freya! When she had seen all her children reach the 7th generation, she summoned them all to Flyland, and there gave them her texts, saying, "Let this be your guide, and it can never go ill with you." Exalted Freya, when she had thus spoken, the earth shook like the sea of Veralda. The ground of Flyland sunk beneath her feet, and the air was dimmed by tears. And when they looked for their mother, she was already risen to her watching star. Then at length thunder burst from the clouds, and the lightning wrote upon the firmament, "Watch!" Far-seeing Freya, the land from which she had risen was now a stream, and except her texts all that was in it was overwhelmed. Obedient children, when they came to themselves again, they made this high mound and built this citadel upon it, and on the walls they wrote the texts, and that every one should be able to find it. They called the land about it Textland. Therefore it shall remain as long as the earth shall be the earth.